Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This week on the Sweetwater Minute.
Wait a minute. A minute?
One minute.
Never lasts a minute.
Never a minute. It's always longer.
All right.
Sweetwater Minutes doesn't have the right ring to it, though, does it?
I like the word Sweetwater Minutes. I like Mitch Minutes. I like the whole thing, but I'm just calling. We're planning on being here more than a minute, right?
We'll probably be a little bit longer than a minute. Yeah, right. Paul Reed Smith has joined us this week on the Sweetwater Minute. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for
Appreciate you being here. You had a bunch of great guitars with you here, and we're going to talk about some amplifiers and things. But let's begin by talking a little bit about the guitar that you're holding right here.
This is a PRS Acoustic. It's called a Tenara Grand. Actually, Ricky Skaggs named it that. It's the Latin word for thunder. And, you know, these things are being played by a very high percentage of the acoustic guys on tour. And just doing that, you get an idea of the sustain and the balance.
It's a remarkably balanced guitar with a lot of projection, a lot of volume. Did you do special things to it to achieve those, or is it a trade secret that you don't know?
No, it's not a trade secret anymore. We talk a lot about it. We got our hands on an old Taurus, which is the father of the guitar, and we X-rayed it in a mammogram machine. They're trying to figure out, it's a little teeny guitar. What was the old man thinking? And what this is a speaker cabinet, really. This is all locked up, and this is all locked up, but this is really loose. So this is going nuts, which is why I can do that with my arm, and then this is the port of the cabinet. A normal acoustic guitar, if you touch it on your body, it changes volume, but this one doesn't change volume because the back's not making noise. The top's going nuts. It's built on a different theory, really.
Right. So you built basically a rigid enclosure and put a loose top on top of it to do all of the vibrating, all of the amplification.
Right, and there's fan bracing in here instead of all the cross braces. We've done, it's a combination of kind of classical and steel string bracing.
Right.
And the tops, I mean, you can hear it's just going nuts.
Yeah, it's extremely resonant.
Yeah.
Right, beautiful.
And the other thing is it's ringing a long time. It's just, you know, there's nothing subtracting. The top is doing what the strings are asking it to do.
Right, marvelous.
So we make a lot of private stock and collection acoustics and regular acoustics, and this one is our rep Ron Berry's sample, and it's very interesting. It's each time I come here to Sweetwater, we bring the sample, and it's just getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. So
right, it's really opening up.
Well, actually, and I'm not sure I believe in opening up. I think the finish is drying.
Yeah. I guess I'd call that the same thing, though, right? The guitar is kind of maturing.
It takes a while for all the solvents that are in the finish to leave. About a year and a half, actually. I've got some pieces of finish behind my desk, and I constantly check it about how long it takes to mature. Right.
Now, finish is one of the things you've also been working on the electric guitars, is it not? And you have a new motto, if you will, cracking the code of the electric guitar tone. Can you tell us where that whole idea originated and how the finish works into that and some of the other aspects of the electrics that you've come up with?
I wasn't real fond of my teacher's guitars kicking my ass.
Yeah.
I wasn't really, you know, not that they were, but there were times that you would pick up something made in the 50s and it just had something. And I spent a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out what that was. And finally, you know, I keep a 58 gold top and a 57 Strat and a 63 SG and an old D28 in my office, and we're always comparing these instruments to those.
Right.
It's gotten to the point we don't take them out anymore because we're not there. It's more about going forward, but I needed to know what happened in the rearview mirror to be able to go forward.
Right.
Look, I was diapers in 1958. I wasn't invited to that party. You know? I wasn't my thing, right?
Right.
So, but now I think the term cracking the code really is about why were these old instruments so extraordinary, and why people pay such high money for them. People don't give money for things that aren't worth it. They just don't do it long term. You know, pet rocks don't go for big money.
Not for very long,
not for very long. And the term's cracking the code, but in a way it was a code, right? And from now, I wouldn't ask that old 28 to do what I just did here. I mean, I might ask it to do it, but I'm not sure it would. It's more the bracing on the back of that guitar is way smaller. I mean, these things got huge, look at this huge braces inside, but the top's just as loose as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So what did you what process did you go through to match and surpass those benchmark guitars that you've been keeping as your standards to work against?
Well, look, guitar making is a multi-dimensional art, whether it be design work for headstock and body shape, or design and carving of the neck and the shape and the fretting and the inlaying of all that, or the magnetic microphones that are on this guitar, or the speaker cabinet that's on this guitar, or the bridge on this guitar, the bridge on that guitar, and the finish on this guitar. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. At the different kinds of art forms you got to become good at, and so I can't nail it down to any one thing. It's really a whole pile of different art forms all coming together to get you what would be a powerful musical, long-term musical instrument, not just a fashion statement.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And the idea is something you could, if you own this guitar, could you pass it on to your kids and you'd be proud that, you know, hey, there's guitars in the attic, go get them, you know.
Right, right.
And you help pay for your college with them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the specific changes that you've made and some of the more recent developments that you've had. Why don't we begin with the finish that we were talking about a little bit earlier? You have the V12 finish, correct?
Okay, so we named it V12 because we've been working on it for about 12 years. It was kind of like victory after 12 years. It's a nitro top coat that's bound together with acrylic instead of coconut stuff. Nitro is literally cotton put into nitric acid, cellulose put into that's why they call it nitrocellulose.
Right, sure.
So you take a tree and you stick it in nitric acid, you get this goo, and from that goo you make a resin that end up being a paint. The problem with the material is it melts when bug spray gets on it, right? It dries over a very long period of time and has a tendency to weather check. So we found a material that, in my mind, felt just about the same, wasn't as sticky. We could make it as thin, it was as glassy, it buffed out really well, and it sounded really good. That stuff, you take a razor blade to it, it will shatter. Whereas a lot of new paints are full of kind of a rubbery material, so that if you hit the bumper of the car and you bend it in, it doesn't crack the paint.
Right.
Good for cars, not good for guitars. Really bad for guitars. Right. So and the other thing is that finish on there is about 6,000 or 7 thousandths thick, which is 2.5 pieces of paper thick. It's really thin. If I was to bandsaw through that guitar, you'd be really surprised how thin that finish is.
It's just a skin on there.
It's a skin. Look, a finish was not invented to make guitar sound better. The finish was invented to make the guitar more beautiful, and when you sweat on it, not to have it stain the wood. That's what it was invented for.
Right.
So getting it to be part of the sound of the guitar is an art form in itself.
And it really is, you know, sometimes you see guitars with a real thick, heavy finish on it, and you almost feel like it's constricting the resonance of the wood and keeping it from moving. So this obviously allows it to, I won't say breathe because I don't like that term. I don't.
Yeah, but the guitar, feel the guitar.
Oh
it's
yeah,
vibrating.
the whole thing is just alive.
It's alive.
One end to the other, it's just.
Yeah.
Yeah, up here it's just going crazy. But that's also a matter of choosing the right woods as well, and then encasing them in that skin.
And getting the water out of the woods, and getting the resins crystallized, and making the things that the strings touch vibrate.
Right.
Look, if I make that out of rubber, how's the guitar going to sound? Worse or better?
It's probably going to sound a little dead.
Dead, right? Well, so everything the string touches is God.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure to get all the bits right. It's a combination of things. Look, I'm 56 years old, so it's white hair, you know, I'm growing a yarmulke, whatever. We used to have a show when I was a kid called Ed Sullivan, and it would be a guy with 10 plates and 10 sticks, and he would try to get them spinning on the sticks. Nobody cheers until all 10 plates are up. Right. Nobody cheers with 9 plates up. It's the same thing with guitars. Nobody cheers until all 10 plates are up. It's a complicated art form, and I'm trying to get all 10 plates to be spinning at the same time, which is an analogy, but that's just the way it is, you know.
Right, right. And there's another aspect to that too, though. There's the resonance, there's the guitar itself, but there's also the feel of it. Yeah. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the satin finishing on the necks that you've been working on, some of the changes there. Is that something you can tell us about?
Sure. Just reach behind you and grab me. I'm going to get up and move this guitar for a second. So this is a NF3, has our new narrow field pickups on it, which is a humbucking that's sensing a shorter piece of string, so it's got a clearer tone. But what's interesting is that the wood here is finished. You can feel it's finished.
Yeah,
but there's no finish on top of the wood. So what we do is we take this UV jelly and we put it in the wood and hit it with a UV light, and the finish, the wood becomes the finish. Imagine soaking the neck in super glue and then sanding it down, which is what some of the old early Eric Clapton guitars were actually. You want the wood to be the finish, just like as if you sweated on the guitar for 10 years and the oils from your hands hardened in the wood. It's the same kind of thing.
Right. So it really feels played in.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's just the first day you get it, you're home.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. So.
Right. It's something I've always loved about both of my PRSs have rosewood necks, and it's that natural feel. After you've played it in a bit, it even feels better than when you first grab it. Like you said, the oils.
You're talking about the solid rosewood necks.
Yeah. Right.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Right. It's that same kind of a thing. Now you touched on the narrow field pickups in that guitar, and I'm holding a Signature Limited, which has the 408 pickups in it. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the changes you've made in the pickups and what you've discovered as you've been cracking the code of that aspect of the tone?
Well, there's a reason why old PAFs go for a couple $1,000s each. They sound really good, right? So I spent a lot of time with some pickups and actually disassembled them and sent them off for a whole bunch of reports. And when I got the reports back on every aspect of the pickup, they were all the same as the entire industry believes, except 2 of the reports were wildly different than what everybody thinks. And I was like, oh, really? And so from that came 5708s and these narrow fields and a whole bunch of these other pickups. But if you remember the origins of the humbucking pickup, they had a cover on them.
Yes.
Right. So the coils in a humbucking were never meant to see the light of day. Those little oval coils with the big gaps were never meant to be seen. What was meant to be seen was a cover. And so what we did was we said, okay, if they were meant to see the light of day, what would they look like? And they don't look. And we've changed the way our pickups look. All the gaps are gone.
Right.
And this is the new look of our pickups. So the narrow field started it, and then we did these signature pickups, which is a narrower humbucking and a wider humbucking. And then we changed our regular custom pickups over to this. And this is the new look for PRS, whether it be, and there was some other origins in the 513 pickups. But if you think about Fender in the 50s, they had their own pickups and their own bridges and their own headstocks and their own bodies and their own cases and everything. Gibson had their own headstocks and neck shapes and inlays and pickups and bodies and this, that, and the other, right?
Sure.
And same thing with Gretsch, same thing with Rickenbacker. And for us, this is where it's starting to land. It's all our proprietary stuff. Now we still have wonderful sounding pickups in DGTs and Tremontis and Santanas, and those artists are probably not going to change over to this, but the core of our line is changing rapidly over to this new stuff. So I'll tell you a story. We went to our engineer, our design engineer, and he's not my age, he's a lot younger. We said, if you had designed a ring to make a pickup going down, what would it have looked like? Well, this thing looks like a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Because that's what he holds, right? That was normal for him, and I'm like, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it worked really well. And I've always toyed around with the idea of having the bass pickup be narrower than the treble pickup. And I'll give you an example of that. When I was in a repair shop, Les Paul Deluxes would come in, and people would take the deluxe pickups out and put humbuckings in. And they always said, I like the treble pickup better, but I miss my old bass pickup.
Right.
Because they liked it having a narrow field for the bass pickup and a wider field for the treble pickup.
Right.
And these things are going over great. The way this works is that when you pull these switches up, it's single coil and no volume loss. So I'm going to turn your amp on clean, okay?
Sure.
I'm going to demonstrate this right now. Hold on a second. Okay, so if you just go or something. Okay, now it's clear, but there's no real volume loss. So if I treble pickup, same thing. Humbucking and then single coil.
Yeah.
So what happens is we're disconnecting the screw side coil when I hit the switch, and then adding 1,500 turns to the pickup. So it's not an anemic single coil. It's a real single coil. Sounds somewhere in between a kind of a P90 and a lipstick pickup and a Strat pickup, somewhere in the middle.
Right, but it still gets that top end that you associate with a single coil design that it's so nice and chimey and nice and open.
Here, let's switch for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, so the thing I like about it is that and if I switch to humbucking, back to single coil.
Yep.
Same thing with the treble pickup. So this would be the in humbucking and a single coil.
Yep. Yeah, I was very impressed when I played the first signature, the private stock version of this, with the way those pickups were balanced when you do the tapping on those, because most pickups you lose all the volume. You know, when you drop back, you may get a tone that's closer to a single coil.
Right.
But I think these are closer to a real single coil. Most pickups, when you take out that smaller coil just doesn't deliver the same sound as a Strat has.
Right, and when you say tap, what they mean by that is that they put a wire in between and they tap just this one and let that one go. What we're doing is literally disconnecting this one, and then there's another coil on top of this one, and we're hooking that one up in series. So when you hit it, you've got a 6K coil instead of a 4K coil.
So there are 2 coils in this front.
There's
front
two
part of the
coils
bottom?
in this one and the 2 coils in this one in
Interesting.
series, and so you're almost untapping it when you're hitting the switch.
Right. Well, you're tapping it as opposed to splitting it, I guess, would be probably the accurate way to say it, right?
You're not split. It's somewhere in there, but yes, you're disconnecting that and adding 6K, but it's not anemic,
Right.
which is most humbuckings. When you pop the single coil thing, it's single coil, but it just loses some of the
Loses the volume, it loses the kind of beef.
It's a little bit of beef it misses,
Yeah, right. Now you've looked at every aspect of the guitars. You talked a little bit about gluing frets and the way the nuts are put in and tuners and all of those kind of things.
Well, we should actually go over that for a second.
Sure.
In the 50s, everybody glued their frets in. Right? So the idea was that when you played the guitar and sweated on it, the frets didn't move position. A lot of guitar companies aren't gluing frets in anymore. We're meticulous about making sure every fret is glued in. It makes a mold around the teeth of the frets and makes sure that the thing's stable in the fretboard. Same thing with a nut. If you put a couple little teeny pieces of glue on there to hold it in place, that's one thing. But if you flood everything on the face and underneath the nut, you've then essentially made the nut part of the guitar. It's not sitting on a couple little pinpoints. It's then actually part of the instrument, which was normally known in the 50s. That was something that was very, very common. There's a lot of things that are just basic good guitar making that we try to tend to at PRS, whether it's how you put the truss rods in, how you glue the fretboards on, the fact that you don't fret the guitar until long after the neck's carved and had a chance to check it, how we dry the woods, how we get the water out, how we get the resins to crystallize, make sure the nuts are glued on well, is what you brought up, make sure the frets are glued on well and leveled well. It goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of handwork. Because I've been to the factory and there's a lot of handwork. These aren't stamped out by machine. There's a lot of handwork that goes into these.
I think computers are wonderful tools. Like when you're typing a letter, if you typed it on a typewriter and you made a mistake, you have to do it again. On a computer, you can just fix the word and hit the thing. But it's the same letter. You don't change the letter, right? So I think it's a great tool. When you do this video, you'll be editing in a computer. It's a wonderful tool, but we're going to have said the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, but before it was film on the cutting room floor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Different tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of subtle little differences in the guitars as well. I was just noticing the tuners are different, right?
Well, yeah. Thank you for saying something. Actually, we got a letter from somebody recently that they were concerned that because it was an open gear, that dirt would get in it or something. And I'm like, open gears have been around forever. The casing is set up in such a way so you can tighten the screw on the end of the shaft and get the worm to be very tight against the gear. Okay?
Right.
But I think it's handsome that it's open. There's no reason really for there to be a cover on it. It's an extra part that you have to put on it, but we're not trying to save money here. We're trying to make a tuning peg that's rock solid when you turn it, you use it. As you move this thing, there should be absolutely no play between turning this and moving that. And if you've got a tremolo, you're going to want to lock the string down like you've got here. So look, the tuning stability of this device has a lot to do with whether the guitar stays in tune or not.
Right, absolutely. So lots of little touches. It's very impressive.
We worked very hard on that, maybe 8-9 months of design and execution.
Just the tuning
Japan
machine?
and yeah, it was really,
Wow. But that attention to detail is why the guitars are so incredible. I mean, they're really very incredible instruments. Really enjoy playing mine. The Signature is one of my favorites that's come out in a while. I think that's a beautiful guitar.
That's the thing. Look, I mean, I'm not even plugging it in. Listen.
You don't even need an amp.
Well, that's actually. So, Mitch, that's been longer than a minute.
Just a little over a minute, but you have so much great stuff to say, and the guitars are well worth discussing. So I appreciate you taking the time to come in today and sit down with us.
You're welcome. That I've been here enough times that I can tease you is great. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right, good.
Thanks, Paul.
You're very welcome.
I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.